Welcome to the Texas Legacy Support Network Show. I'm your host, Chris Doelle.
And this is a show produced by TLSN to help us all remember some of the great sports moments and sports people from the University of Texas. Now, the TLSN is not associated with the University of Texas. Instead, it is a free educational, historical site that is highly insightful about some of those great University of Texas athletics stories. In this show, we take some of the great visuals, the great stories, the great history that is contained on texaslsn.org, and we try to bring them to life. We bring them to life by adding the voices of the people involved in the stories, as well as the people who were there for those stories. Anytime you hear something here on the TLSN show, rest assured you can find it on texaslsn.org. On this extremely user-friendly site, you will find much more information about the stories we cover here in the show. The idea here is that we are combining the best of both worlds. You've got the detailed narrative on texaslsn.org, and here you get the audio direct from those people involved. My job is to bring the stories from texaslsn.org to life and do that with audio. Your job is to enjoy the stories you hear here and then dig in over at texaslsn.org. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1. Today, I am going to talk about what I feel is a really cool project that is underway, and that is to make these statues, these busts of the 4 UT quarterbacks who have won national championships. They are so amazing. I've already seen some sneak peeks at the busts. You are going to love them, and you are going to get to see them when you go to Daryl K. Royal Memorial Stadium. My guests today are two people without whom this project would not have happened. Jimmy Nixon is kind of the guy, the driving force behind this whole thing. He's the one who got it going, is working on getting it funded and making it a reality. My other guest is Ken Bjorge. He is the sculptor responsible. You already know his work if you've been to Memorial Stadium, if you've seen the statue of Earl Campbell. That was done by Ken Bjorge. So you know these four are going to be amazing. I will introduce you to them right after these messages.
You're listening to the LSG Sports Network, the authority on Texas high school football.
Hey, did you know that Lone Star Gridiron does mini helmets? Yeah, custom designed mini helmets that match your school. When quality and attention to detail are important, choose authentic Lone Star Gridiron mini helmets. Our library currently has hundreds of different Texas high school football teams. If you don't see your helmet, reach out to us about creating one. And hey, they make the coolest fundraisers for your booster clubs. Go to LoneStarGridiron.com and look for mini helmets on the top menu bar.
Hey, did you play Texas high school football? If you did, you're part of an elite group, the Brotherhood of Texas High School Football. All football players, past and present, who have ever suited up in the Lone Star State are eligible. Go to LoneStarGridiron.com/brotherhood. And thank you for the part you played in the greatest sport in the greatest state.
All right, everybody join me in welcoming Ken Bjorge, a sculptor, to the show. Ken, how are you doing today?
Today is a great day. It almost always revolves around weather, and the weather here today, finally we got past our snowstorms yesterday, and so here we are having a nice, bright, sunshiny day.
Nice. Well, first off, I want to say I'm jealous that you get to do sculpture for a living because I love being creative and I love being able to interview you. I just want to dig into that life of how long you've been doing this sort of stuff.
Well, it started in the mid-'80s. At that time, I was living in Spokane, Washington, and had a career in the law I was a law professor at Gonzaga University, and found out I had a little bit of ability to do the sculpture. And as a result, I decided there's too many times when a guy said, gosh, I wish I'd have done that.
Right.
And I'm just not one of those guys. If I feel like it's something that merits my attention, then I just as soon go for it. So that's how it came about.
So what is your connection with football? Have you been a fan? How did that get built?
Well, as all of us seem to find our way into the sports world, it had more to do with Friday night football and Saturday and Sunday watching it on TV. And it was through that began to learn that there are people out there who are consummate sports figures that also are just wonderful people, and you get a feeling, kinship actually, with people through the sports media. So that's where my connection initially started.
How did the connection happen between you and the University of Texas as far as sculpting some of their brilliant pieces that are there?
Well, it turns out that the Flathead Valley is home to, not home, but a second home to a lot of folks from Texas. So there was that ultimate curiosity between those folks and myself when they saw I was working on a sculpture. As I was working on it, a number of people from alumni of University of Texas, Jimmy Nixon was one of them. Jimmy was sort of taken with my ability to do a sculpture of a human form. And he said, would you want to do a sculpture of someone like Earl Campbell? And of course, Earl's name is something that is always in the annals of the mind. He's a wonderful sports figure and just a really decent person, as I come to find out. And so that initial connection started with those folks that were Texas alumni.
Nice. And so you did the Earl one, and for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Hey, I want to jump in here real quick and remind everybody that you can go to texaslsn.org to look at all of these statues. There at the Texas Sports Legacy Network website, there are so many great pictures showing the Earl Campbell statue, showing it at the Foundry, showing the completed busts, some of the busts in progress. Lots of great information there. All right, I'll get back to the interview.
You did the Earl one, and for anybody who hasn't seen it, it is just so impressive. And I know Earl was a big guy, but that statue is giant. Well,
there are people who will impress you with their dimensions, but his size came about also with regard to his personality. He's just one of the finest people I think I've ever met.
And you and I were talking the other day about trying to get the look right on the Earl Campbell face. If you could relay that story about, because people don't even think about, that's a detail that you have to work a long time with to get just that right expression.
Well, there's a signature that we all have, and that signature may be in our eyes. It could be the way that we smile, or the way that we, tilt your head to the side as you're talking. And with Earl, he had a game face that was just mind-boggling. He had such great determination, and you could see it in him. And it's difficult to express that visually as someone who is observing that individual, wanting to make sure that signature is there. And I could not get it. It was I was on a ladder working. The sculpture is 9 feet tall, and so I'm working on him off of a ladder. And I was getting real irritated with myself because I just couldn't get that expression on his face. And I do most of my work of this sort in my studio, which has a fireplace in it, and I was getting a little chilly, so I wound up going over and throwing a few sticks of wood in the fireplace, and I had the axe in my hand, and I took another look at Earl, and the longer I looked at it, the more irritated with myself I got, and I walked over there, and with that axe in my hand, wasn't really thinking about anything. I wound up lopping his head off and starting all over again. You know, if this is something that's somewhere down the line, you'd just as soon edit out, because you just wouldn't want people thinking that I'm this loose cannon. That'd be fine.
No, what I like about that story is it shows the attention to detail that you have, that you want to make darn sure it doesn't leave your studio until it looks like you want it to look, till you have captured that signature look that you're fighting for. And that speaks volumes for you as a professional, perfectionist, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it has as much to do with pride of authorship as it does just making sure that when somebody looks at the work, they know exactly who it is that they're looking at.
Definitely. And so let's fast forward to the project that we're here to talk about, a series of busts. If you could explain who they are, why we're talking about that.
Well, it turns out that in the history of University of Texas, their quarterbacks have made a huge mark on the sports world, starting with James Street and Vince Young, Duke Carlisle, Eddie Phillips. These four quarterbacks were basically instrumental in establishing national championships. And so the four of them are, from my standpoint, thus portrayed as a bust that can, under most circumstances, then be placed in any particular location that the University of Texas would see fit to display them.
Right.
And as those four individuals have developed in terms of the sculpture itself, there's two of them that are finished, James Street and Duke Carlisle, and then Eddie Phillips and Vince Young will be the next ones that are on the schedule to be molded and cast at the foundries here in Montana.
Nice. And so if you could talk about the difference between being able to see, I guess, somebody in person or video versus maybe one of the older ones that all you have is photographs. How does that change your task?
Well, it actually doesn't change them, because the idea here is to portray the individuals. Their images are meant to be portrayed as they appeared at the time that they were playing for the University of Texas. So I have to work from photographs no matter what, and going from a two-dimensional image on a photograph to a three-dimensional usually requires a certain amount of, not usually, but almost always then will require a series of photographs that show profile, straight on shots, and so on, so that I'm sure that I've got their structure, visual structure, nailed, and that's the point. I'm not trying exactly to do a portrait, but rather a likeness, and that likeness also requires that signature that I spoke about with regard to Earl try to make sure that that's there so that people recognize who it is that I'm dealing with. And it turns out that the photographs that I've been provided give me enough of an ability to do a 360 on each one of these individuals, so that, as a matter of fact, there are people that have come in from Dallas or from Austin or wherever it may be, and they say, well, how come you're doing the sculpture of James Street, for example? Mm-hmm. And in the course of it, that's a critique that I welcome, because if they recognize who it is that I'm working on without having a sign there to tell them, then I think probably I've done the right thing.
I love that. Also, one of our conversations we both talked about a love for history and telling stories. If you could explain what it means to be able to play a role in helping preserve these images, these likenesses, and help tell this story.
Well, as a kernel of thought, start off with the idea that individuals of a certain sort, whether they're sports figures or if they're scientists or whatever, the idea is to create an image that is a part of the history of any given institution, and so you wind up with an image which itself tells the history of that part of the institution. And so you wind up here with 4 quarterbacks out of different eras at the University of Texas. And so those folks who were well acquainted with them, it brings back that flood of memories of times of our youth, I guess, that were important to us at the time, and these individuals that have been cast in bronze are going to be there forever to lend credence to the image that the University of Texas wants to portray with regard to sports. And so, right. I mean, that's a part and parcel of the whole purpose of doing these sculpture.
I love it. It's an American dream. There's so many American dreams out there, but this is a wonderful one. I love it.
Well, as I say, I'm blessed in a variety of ways, but beyond having a family here, my wife is just a wonderful lady. It makes this adventure, it makes this trip a really exciting way to spend a life.
I love it. Ken Bjorge, I want to thank you so much for sitting down, chatting with me, and I look forward to the day when I can meet you in person.
Well, the same goes here. I really appreciate it, Chris, and have a great day today.
Join me in welcoming Jimmy Nixon, who I guess you're the man behind the whole idea of these set of busts coming into creation, right?
That's right.
So where did that come from?
The idea really came from the fact that a lot of people who knew that I had the idea and gotten the Earl Campbell Heisman statue done. That went in the stadium, they thought that there wasn't enough recognition of what, people like Dick Carlisle and James Street, Eddie Phillips, and Vince Young had done, and that they were kind of forgotten, as were those teams. Other than the trophy for the national championship, there wasn't so much honoring the players on those teams. Right. And there wasn't anything, that was out front that the fans could go see and remember.
Nice. And so you knew Ken Bjorge from your experience with the Earl Campbell statue, correct?
Right. I met Ken 23 years ago. I have a place here in Big Fork, so I'm from San Antonio and summer residence here in Big Fork. And Ken and I are very close. I really admire his work.
Yeah, he does exceptional work. It's been amazing for me to learn about his talent and all the stuff he's created.
Oh, yeah, you ought to see. Have you been to his site and seen some of the wildlife he's done, from the African Big Five to North American big game, the moose and caribou and elk, white-tailed deer, mountain lions, bison, you name it. He's done them all. Nice.
And then so you knew Mr. Bjorge, like you said, a friend for a long time. You're an alum for the University of Texas. How does that go from, hey, I used to go there, to here, I have an idea, here's a statue?
Well, I thought that, as a fan, since I was a little boy, I always, had a love for the Longhorn team. Mm-hmm. And, ended up getting a degree there. So, there was just something very special about it my whole life. And I still remember the first game I went to. I think we lost to Rice in Memorial Stadium. And even in losing, I was hooked.
Right.
A fourth-generation graduate. My great-grandfather was the first. My grandfather, my father, and me.
Nice. I love that. And you mentioned a very important word there, Memorial Stadium. That's kind of what this whole thing was created to be, was a memorial. So talk about how this kind of enhances that.
Well, from very early in my experience going to the games, I saw those bronze plates in the various tunnels that go into the actual stadium. And, I wondered about them. And, of course, when I was old enough, I realized what they were. Mm-hmm. And, I loved the big one in the south end zone. I guess those were University of Texas players who had been killed in action in World War II. And the original ones were World War I. And that, of course, was what the stadium was built for, to honor those people. And getting from there to statues, I like bronze, and I like three-dimensional art, and I feel like that fits more with the nature of the flagship university.
Yes.
And just adds to its mystique.
Yeah, definitely. So talk about the transition from an idea to a physical object in there. What are the steps involved? How does that happen?
Well, without going into a long story, since I guess it started with the statue of Daryl Royal and Jamail that went into the south end zone, and there was an issue with that, which I won't go into, but Earl was already being made, or was made, and the faculty senate voted not to allow any more statues of living people on campus. Mm-hmm. And that kind of left Earl in limbo.
Right.
We would have been maybe the first to have or the first that I know of to have a Heisman statue of a former winner.
Right.
In our stadium. So we were right at the edge of that. Now everybody's done it. So, once more, we're kind of elite. We were kind of a leader with that. Mm-hmm. And that, after, seeing, how popular that's become and all, well, I thought maybe what we ought to do is honor the national championship teams.
Right.
And besides the heads of the quarterbacks, what these things really are monuments that recognize all the players.
Right.
And, and with black marble and gold lettering. And once again, I think like it's art. It's fine art. And nobody else has anything like that I've seen.
Right.
So once again, we lead.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful tribute to those teams because people think of the bust and you're glorifying a quarterback, but it's really not. They were just the figurehead. And like you said, you list all the names of anybody who played on that team. That's
correct. And walk-ons too, A lot of them would play on the scout teams and, all the players. And their names will all be there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the donors will also be there. So
yeah, and that was my next question. I'm assuming that from idea to finished product, there's a step that involves money in there. And so you're saying you didn't just write a check and make it all happen?
Well, we're almost there. We've got a little ways to go. Mm-hmm. But I wanted it to be affordable for all the fans. So, right. To have your name on one of the pedestals is $250.
Nice.
That's a whole lot more affordable than a brick over there, I think, in the Alumni Center or at various places in Memorial Stadium. Well, right. Don't let me forget Daryl Royal. I mean, DKR, right. Texas Memorial Stadium. I'm just old, and I remember it the way it was.
Right. So I guess if somebody's interested, there's still time to get listed as one of the donors, right?
That's right. And, of course, Street was done first. He was maybe the one person that the friends that contacted me thought maybe had been left out or not been given proper respect or recognition. So counting myself, I think the first person I called was Pat Frost in San Antonio. I think I talked to 22 people, counting myself. The 20 of us paid for that.
Nice.
But the other two really didn't say no. They said, let me think about it, but they were a little late. So, and the 20 was important because James Street, of course, was 20-0 as a starting quarterback.
Nice. I love that.
Since then, I've come to find out that Duke Carlisle was also undefeated as a starting quarterback. I think he was 12-0.
Awesome. So how would somebody go about reaching out to get involved as a donor?
Well, Pat Frost was good enough to handle the money. So if someone wants in, they should write Pat and tell him which one they want on, or all three. There's a little bit of room on for all three, Duke, Eddie, or Vince.
Right.
And if they, so if they wanted three of them, they'd say, here's $750, $250, $250, and $250 for. Or if they wanted to get on one, it would be $250. And you send it to Pat Frost at Frost Bank, PO Drawer, 1600, San Antonio, Texas, 78296.
I love it. And for anybody who is maybe driving or running or doing something where they can't write down that address, that will be available on the show notes as well as texaslsn.org.
I think that's just a wonderful opportunity to get your name out there as a supporter because, like you said, it's going to be there forever, and they're gorgeous.
Well, that's right. And you've now seen the pedestals, which are more like monuments. And I'm very happy with them, and I think they'll go almost anywhere. So we're waiting. Chris Ponsky is in charge of placement of stuff in that new south end zone pavilion, which is what I think you enter into when you go in. And she's going to make the determination of where they go in the room.
Nice. And what's the time frame look like for when people will see these unveiled?
Well, they'll be unveiled at the home opener in 2021 at the same time the new south end zone building goes into use. And that, of course, you can have all the not only the locker room, but all the football offices and athletic offices, I believe. Nice. Or maybe just football. I don't know. But that'll be the football building for sure.
Right. Anything else you'd like to share about this project, these busts, the pedestals, you name it?
Well, I just encourage everybody that's got an interest in it to go ahead and get on board, because I figure that by the end of the summer we'll probably be full, and that we're glad to have them. It's an honor to me too. Anybody that supports the project.
I love it, and I guess finally, what does it mean to you to play a role in preserving some of this history, honoring some of these folks?
Well, it's just just kind of something I like to do. I don't know why, but I don't care about personal recognition at all. But it makes me feel good to see that I may have had something to do with something like that.
I love it. Well, James Nixon III, Jimmy, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and helping educate people on this very cool project.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, and it's been a pleasure meeting you. Can't wait to meet you in person. And by the way, would love to have your name on.
Definitely.
Hey, once again, I want to thank my guests James Nixon III and Ken Bjorge for sitting down with us and sharing some of their story about what I think is a really, really cool project to get these busts in at Daryl K. Royal Memorial Stadium. I know for one, my donation will be joining that list so I can get my name on one of those pedestals. Please, to find out more information about this and a whole host of great information about UT athletics, head over to texaslsn.org. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for what I consider the most valuable gift you can give, and that is your attention. Thank you so much for listening to these stories. And then, don't forget, if you subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, any place you find podcasts, if you subscribe, you will get each and every episode as soon as it's published. Please help us by sharing these stories with anybody you can think of that is interested in University of Texas athletics. And make sure you also share TexasLSN.org.
For the Texas Legacy Support Network Show and TexasLSN.org,
I'm your host, Chris Doelle, reminding you, set your goals high and don't stop till you get there.